Our keynote speaker for this portion of the program is Dian Grueneich. She is a national leader in environment and energy issues and has served with great distinction as a commissioner of the Public Utility Commission. California has long been the leader nationally in leading public utilities in a more sustainable direction. And so it's a real treat and an honor for us to hear from her today. Okay.
Okay. There we go. For the next person, I've put these right here, so don't forget them. Let me put this. Well, I'm very, very pleased to be here today. I've had the ability to be here this morning. I was back east yesterday, so I couldn't hear the remarks yesterday. But this is a very important coming together, I think, to really understand how are we going to move not just California and not just the country, but the entire world into the sustainable energy future that we all need. And my message today to all of you is actually a very simple one, that we must harness the full potential of clean energy, and in particular energy efficiency, to ensure a politically and environmentally and a sustainable future. We can do no less, and we have to be very single-minded about this. And the way we are going to do it is really what's interesting to me is that I spent no time actually talking with the speakers this morning, but my message is the same that I heard from, I think, every speaker that you heard from, that the key to this is going to be integration, innovation, and collaboration. The academic world is essential to this, but I'm here to talk a bit about what is going on in the policy level. But unless we meld together and work together and innovate together between what's going on with government and policymakers there, what's going on in the academic community at every level and in every discipline, and how we are going to bring in the private sector and the investment dollars that represents and the innovation there, and really find ways to work together, we're not going to be able to address climate change with the utter urgency that we need to do. So I want to start off with the theme that Art Rosenfeld set this morning, who is a very, very dear friend. We've worked together. He told you a lot about energy efficiency and our tremendous accomplishments. But at a policy level, what we've done in California is we actually have established something called a loading order for how we look at our energy, and in particular, our electricity resources. And we say our number one priority is energy efficiency and demand response. And that matters at a government level, because what it says is when you're thinking of things, when you're thinking of what are you going to build or what are you going to do to meet load, what are you going to do to spur innovation, we have had really a single-minded focus now for over a decade that says we look to energy efficiency and the demand side first. And I think that this is really how we have then been able to keep our tremendous accomplishments that Art and others have told you about. The other thing that has happened is that our long history of success in energy efficiency is now firmly embedded in how the state is approaching our activities on climate change. As you may know, we have a state law here in California, AB, Assembly Bill 32, that requires us to develop a plan and take actions to minimize and mitigate and avoid as much as possible what we can do with greenhouse gas emissions. And I will say that while I am a state official, I can now state this because we took an official vote, my commission, 2 weeks ago, where unanimously we are opposing Proposition 23, which is the bill that would overturn, the initiative that would overturn the state's climate change law. I don't know that I can really say this, but remember, do more than just clapping on this. But as I said in my remarks at the time, I think it actually is utterly simple as a commissioner for me to say we must oppose Proposition 23 because I am charged under the California Constitution. And in my swearing in with the governor and with the California legislature, the duty that I have is to ensure that the residents and businesses of California have an economically sustainable and a reliable energy future. We also have other telecommunications, but in the world of energy. And if we just put our heads in the sand on climate change and say, well, maybe we won't address it for a few years, that isn't something that I could look anybody in the face and say, I am fulfilling my duty as a commissioner. And I just feel very strongly that we have to address climate change and we have to do it systematically and comprehensively. Energy efficiency measures that are at the heart of what California is using in what we call our scoping plan, which is the implementation of AB 23. The energy measures in buildings that we've identified that we're now working on will produce about 15% of the emission reductions needed to meet the 1990 emissions by 2020. In other words, the law requires that for California, we get our emissions by 2020 down to where they were in 1990. Efficiencies in buildings, which you've heard so much about today, which are a key focus, that's where we're really looking. And this strategy is really second to everything, is the second largest area of emission reductions. The other one is getting more efficient fuel standards for our vehicles. The reason why we look so strongly at energy efficiency for greenhouse gases is for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a tool that we have right now. It's available right now. We heard this morning about all of the great innovation, research, changes that may go on with energy efficiency, and believe me, I support all the efforts in those areas. But we also have a lot that we can do right now, and that's incredibly important with energy efficiency. The other reason is that it really can be done on a large-scale effort. The December 2007 report by the McKinsey company concluded that in the United States, at 710 megatons annually in a mid-range case, energy efficiency improvements in residential and commercial buildings, including the appliances inside, make up the largest cluster of negative cost abatement opportunities. Negative cost abatement opportunities is saying that if you do it, you actually save money. Our estimates for California show that by 2020, energy efficiency can result in a net savings of $20 per ton of carbon dioxide reductions. And again, this is what's going to fuel our ability, not just in California, not just nationally, but internationally, to be able to address climate change by getting the cost savings that we will, by having more efficient buildings, by having our whole way of life more efficient. Those are going to be the savings that will then allow us to make the other investments that we know we need to make. In addition, energy efficiency is really the no regrets policy on what to do on energy. And in California, I can say this, even if we didn't have global warming, which we most certainly have, we would still do energy efficiency at the level we are doing because it does address both developing jobs as well as having very significant cost savings. And this is really an area where we look at California, how we've been able to bring together the government, our academic community, Silicon Valley, our whole workforce to be able to create jobs throughout all sectors of the economy. So now I'd like to just turn to what I think are 5 key factors that we need to have to really build a clean energy economy. And as part of this, the way that I think about it is that we have to change fundamentally how consumers and businesses think about energy and how buildings are designed, constructed, used, and maintained. And so I really look at, there are 5 factors, and I'll talk about each of them. The first one is having clear legal and regulatory mandates and policies. The second one is end-to-end long-term strategic planning. The third factor is really addressing how we're going to have significant changes in behavior. The fourth one is research and technology, and the fifth is workforce training and retraining. So let me address each of those factors in turn. The first one is clear legal and regulatory mandates and policies. And when I was sitting here this morning, hearing all about these ideas, what came to mind, and this is what I tell a lot of folks involved in both the academic center and the private sector is, you know, you can have these fabulous ideas, and I mean fabulous ideas, but let me tell you, just at a drop of a hat, you can be completely unable to institute this great idea or this great new business because of government. The world of energy and the world of electricity is hugely regulated. There are commissions like the one that we have in California. In all of the 50 states, under our constitutional law, we have tremendous power. That means we can move things like we have in California, but it also means that you can stop things instantly. And then we also have tremendous power at the national level as well. And so this is a whole area where unless there is a really good understanding of how government policies work and how we make shifts to support the clean energy, it's just not going to happen. But let me give you some good statistics, that it's not just California that's working on clean energy. According to the Pew Center on Climate Change, 26 states have energy efficiency mandates or goals. According to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, which I will say I have worked with for 3 decades now, and it is the premier national lab in the country on energy efficiency. There's great work being done at other national labs as well, but this is something, I live here in Berkeley, we can all be extremely proud of the resource we have there. But they've released a recent report that says that ratepayer funding, and this is the way that the majority of the voluntary energy efficiency efforts in the United States are funded, except for the stimulus money right now, are through small charges on electric and natural gas rates, that they are then collected up into these very large pots of money to do energy efficiency. We've seen in the last 5 years a 5-fold increase in energy efficiency spending. And according to Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, it's likely to continue to grow so that we're now at $6 billion by last year, and they forecast that by 2020 we will have $20 billion. And that's something being done by the states right now, and I'm very involved in those efforts, and they are having a very, very significant impact on how we're going to be able to move forward. This leadership on energy efficiency is also actually showing up on how the states are approaching renewables. According to the United States Department of Energy, 21 states now have renewable energy standards a goal. And as you may know, in California, we've set our renewable standard to get to 33% by 2020. Unfortunately, this year, as in a couple of the previous years, we were unable to get a state law put in place that makes this a mandatory standard. And for our next governor coming in and for our legislature coming in next year, getting in place the 33% mandate for renewable for California has to be, in my mind, the #1 priority that they're having in energy. That with myself and my fellow commissioners and many in the state, we're doing everything we can to move California towards this higher renewable goal, but we absolutely have to have that in law in the state. So I think that we now need to look at the federal side. As I said, the good news is we've got a lot going on in the states. There is absolutely no doubt that a federal law on energy, and I won't even go into climate change, but on energy would really help a lot. First and foremost is the states that don't have any energy efficiency goals or mandates or renewable standards. Enacting national mandates for energy efficiency and renewables, accountable at the state level, I think must be the highest priority in Congress to move us to a clean energy future. The second area that I would pick out is sustainable long-term funding for programs and R&D beyond the current stimulus program. Third would be the establishment of a comprehensive, well-coordinated federal assistance to states on program implementation, evaluation, and best practices in energy efficiency. I'm going to address this a little bit at the end, but I will say, as a person in state government, our resources are really limited. And we don't have enough time where we're learning from each other, and having a very coordinated, comprehensive program at the federal level focused on energy efficiency would help tremendously. The fourth area, also in the area of energy efficiency, would be the establishment of national protocols or standards on how we count energy efficiency savings. Right now, believe it or not, it's done entirely different among the different states because energy efficiency has grown up from the bottoms up. And it's leading to some real difficulties when we think about how the United States is going to participate in a regime that's going to address climate internationally, and especially if we want to and need to make energy efficiency as a core of that carbon regime. And then fifth and finally would be adoption and regular updating of national building standards efficiency codes to really set the floor for where we need to go. The failure of Congress to pass a climate bill is obviously hugely disappointing, but this doesn't mean that we cannot have some action at the federal level, particularly on energy efficiency. This is clearly demonstrated in a forthcoming U.S. EPA guidance for greenhouse gas permits for facilities that are covered by the Federal Clean Air Act. And we're extremely pleased that what we are expecting is that this guidance is going to focus on energy efficiency as the primary control technology for greenhouse gas reductions. In other words, energy efficiency measures will become the best available control technology for greenhouse gas reductions in major stationary sources of pollution. There's going to be a major fight over this, but if we can get this embedded at the federal level, it will absolutely change the role of energy efficiency. We also have proposed federal legislation for Homestar, a major home retrofit program, trying to have some tax financing schemes, and if we can get those passed, those will pass a solid foundation as well. So I want to say that even though we don't have a federal climate law, we still are seeing some promising actions at the federal level, but we all have to work together to see what we can do at the federal. So I'm going to now move on to my factor number 2 of what I see for a clean, sustainable future. And that is having end-to-end long-term strategic planning. I absolutely believe that you have to have a written roadmap as to where you're going. Business does this all the time, but government doesn't really do it a lot. And as a result, you can have a lot of confusion about where government's going with its policies. You can have the private sector not really understanding where to invest or not. Here in California, our commission adopted in 2008, and I've got a copy right here, the very first long-term strategic plan on energy efficiency that the state had ever had. And we spent about a year putting it together. We had great support from Cal and from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. We could not have done it without the resources here in Berkeley. And we just recently, at our last meeting, adopted a new chapter on lighting. This is providing the framework for the next generation of energy efficiency in California. We've got concrete goals, we've got strategies, we separated it out to the near term, the midterm, the long term. And moreover, we've adopted now very concretely in California a concept of market transformation for energy efficiency. And I think it fits in so well to what you have been hearing today and yesterday about where the academic community is going as well. So I'm going to take just a minute to read how our commission has defined market transformation. And I think sitting out here somewhere is Jean Clinton. Jean, are you here? Maybe not. If she is, I wanted to acknowledge her. She's an employee with our commission. She lives here in Berkeley, and it was really a tremendous amount of her thinking that went into this. Here's how we are defining market transformation. Long-lasting, sustainable changes in the structure or functioning of a market achieved by reducing barriers to the adoption of energy efficiency measures to the point where continuation of the same publicly funded intervention is no longer appropriate in that specific market. Market transformation includes promoting one set of efficient technologies, processes, or building design approaches until they are adopted into codes and standards or otherwise substantially adopted by the market, while also moving forward to bring the next generation of even more efficient technologies, processes, or design solutions to the market. And this is, as I said, really now the centerpiece of how we are approaching this. And this is what I mean when I talk about end-to-end planning, that you can't just look at in clean energy, we're going to fund or we're going to have a public policy for one narrow silo. You need to really look at how are you going to incorporate the full range and what are going to be your near-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. In addition to market transformation, our strategic plan has just a couple of other themes that I'll touch upon briefly. One is a sustained focus on strategies, programs, and measures and institutional structures that provide long-term results. We are more and more focusing on saying, if we're going to be spending the billions of dollars that we are spending on energy efficiency, we need to be able to say they are going to be sustained into the future. And I'll just take a moment to say that after we adopted the strategic plan, we went and looked at all the efficiency programs in California, and I am the lead commissioner on energy efficiency at the commission, and I'm very pleased that we increased the funding in California last year by 40%. So everybody in California should be extremely proud. We now have funding from the ratepayers for a 3-year period, 2010 through 2012, that is $3.7 billion. Aside from China, we're pretty sure it's the largest program in the world, and that's why we're talking about being able to move entire markets. A second aspect I'll just touch upon is an interdisciplinary approach that encompasses all aspects of energy efficiency. Doing successful energy efficiency requires that you have inputs from a variety of areas, including research and development, commercialization of emerging technologies, development of codes and standards, public education, marketing and outreach, and workforce education and training. And you really, again, need to think through how you're going to encompass all of those. The other area that we've put forth in our strategic plan is an engagement of a wider range of entities and institutions in developing and delivering programs. Like many states, we in California really focused on what we were doing and then the utilities such as Pacific Gas and Electric and other utilities that we've used to deliver and administer these programs. But when we put together the strategic plan, we realized that that doesn't begin to address and bring in the groups of people that we need that are far beyond just our normal comfort zone, is what I would say. So I think more and more we have to really think at a government level, how are we going to be bringing in the non-utility players, both to get their innovation, but also to get their leadership, and frankly, especially in the private sector, their ability to invest capital in this area. And then the final area that we've picked up here, which I won't go into because you've heard a lot about, is integrated whole building solutions. That we have now this as a major focus of where we're going in California, is really looking at buildings as a whole and what are going to be the integrated solutions. Let me turn to the third factor, which is significant changes in customer behavior for being able to have, I think, a clean energy economy. And that is, if you think about it, in order to achieve market transformation, we actually need to think just as seriously about how we're going to have behavior transformation. We need this from consumers, business, government, and we need to have both an understanding and then a commitment to what does it mean to even think about energy. So I'm very excited that after many, many months of efforts, we're going to be here in California very shortly launching a statewide integrated communications and outreach plan for clean energy. And it's based on very extensive, up-to-date market research that we've been doing on social communication and niche marketing and all sorts of things. It's going to include the launch of a statewide clean energy brand, social marketing best practices, and as I said, our segmentation research to make sure we're getting our messages to specific communities, especially our low-income residents and ethnic communities. These are the types of efforts that we need at every state and on a national level. Unless we really think through the education and the outreach, we are not going to create the demand pull for energy efficiency that we need to do. We are going to have, as part of this outreach plan, a state-of-the-art web portal that will enable information sharing, collaboration, and communication between clean energy professionals. And we have now set up where you can go online and sign up for it. So here's the web address. It's www.engage360.com. And while it is primarily directed now at professionals, we are setting it up so that anybody can come and participate. So for those of you in the audience who are either students or just neighbors here in Berkeley, this is meant also for you to be sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, your visions. Again, it's engage360.com. The fourth factor that I think is essential is research and technology. End-to-end clean energy planning requires a very strong focus on research, development, and deployment. We have to have what we call continuous improvement in efficiencies and buildings. And I'm not going to try and, even go into this because you've got the experts here who are talking to you about R&D, but that has to be a fundamental part of how we are thinking about energy efficiency. And equally important, we have to accelerate the pace at which we are then bringing research and development activities out into be used in the market. Given the absolute limited time we have on global warming, we can't continue to have the same pace of development. I think we heard today it was that batteries were achieving, efficiencies at the pace of every 60 years. I work a huge amount in the supply side with transmission and power plants. And again, there hasn't been a push for innovation at all in the energy sector. We need to really think and set up processes and programs that will absolutely accelerate bringing this into the market. I personally think that the way to do that is to have focused collaborations between the research labs, policymakers, and the private sector, because I think those are the key players. They've got to be talking to one another, they've got to be communicating so that you can move things quickly into the market. The other thing that I want to end with then is, in the final factor, is workforce training and retraining. By its nature, energy efficiency is a continually evolving profession. As one efficiency measure moves or practice becomes widely accepted by consumers or businesses, or moves into codes and standards, new technologies will arise and programs must evolve. So by that very nature, it means that the people who are involved in energy efficiency need to be able to be having new skills and new understandings. We've got some great efforts that have now arisen in large part through the stimulus money that are developing some very key workforce training program. But I want to touch upon one part that I do worry is overlooked, and that is actually the critical lack of capacity within government. I'm a commissioner at a state agency, and I can say both our commission and, as I said, the other state commissions, we're actually charged with designing, approving, overseeing billions of dollars of clean energy programs. 26 states have energy efficiency standards, yet almost every single state lacks sufficient funding either to add needed staff or even to pay for training of existing staff in what are best practices. There is no organization that exists across the public sector, civic sector, or private sector that is filling this gap in critical technical assistance. And as a result, many state and local governments really lack the necessary information on best practices and implementation and the trained workforce to carry out those practices. So I think that this needs to become an area that we focus on a lot more so that we can really say, how are we going to be bringing in this skill set and expertise? So let me just conclude with, again, the simple message. We need collaboration, innovation, and integration. Sustainability has to be a way of life. It's not just for government, it's not just for academics, it's not just for policymakers, it is for all of us. We need to make sure, as I said, that the billions of dollars that we're now looking at for clean energy actually have a roadmap that we understand for where they're going. I personally believe that every state and every government should have a written roadmap on clean energy, and because I'm passionate about energy efficiency, I think there should be one specifically on energy efficiency as well. We need to be clear on our goals, our metrics to measure progress, and engage the full range of stakeholders. And for the academic community, it means you need to understand the limits and the opportunities in both the government and in the private sector. And you need to support policymakers through the work that you do and seek to ensure that your research and efforts will find a voice in government and the private sector. This is a movement we are engaged in, and California and Berkeley are in the forefront. We must embrace sustainability at all levels and in all aspects of our lives, both personally and professionally. So let me close by just saying, let's waste no time in embracing this as our vision, our mission, and most importantly, our passion. Thank you.